Awesome. So now we are live. We'll wait for some people to jump in. Just going to test on all platforms to see if it is operating smoothly. Perfect. Yep. So we're live on LinkedIn. It looks like we're live on Facebook as well. We're live on YouTube. And then we'll go live on Instagram right now. There you go. Go live. So Erwin, I'm just going to ask you to do a quick favor on your Instagram. If you still have it open, there should be a go live button. So just click on that and you'll be live on Instagram as well.
Fabulous. Go live.
Hey guys, thank you so much for joining. We're going to get started in just a minute here. Just making sure that we're live on all platforms.
Good evening, everyone.
All good?
Oh, Joe Costanza. What's up, bro?
Awesome. Okay, so I guess we're ready to rock and roll. Thank you guys so much for joining us in today's third installment of the Ask Me Anything series. If you guys are new to this series, basically what it is that we bring in an expert guest to answer any of your questions on a particular topic for the month. My name is Austin, and I am your host today, and we have our very special guest and subject matter expert about investing in the U.S. as a Canadian, Mr. Erwin Szeto. For those who don't know who Erwin is, he's a real estate investor, coach, mentor. He's the host of The Truth About Investing in Real Estate for Canadians, which is one of the top 100 business podcasts in the entire world. So very impressive stats on there. And he's recently shifted his focus into investing in the U.S. So Erwin, really appreciate you joining us here today.
Happy to be here, Austin. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, man. So guys, as you probably know how this works, feel free to drop any questions you have about investing in the States as a Canadian down in the chat, and we'll get to it. So I already see questions coming in, but we'll get started on something very simple to begin with, though. So obviously, we know that you're a Canadian investor, Erwin,
Yes.
and you recently have been selling off your portfolio to shift your focus in the States.
Yes.
Can you walk us through the thought logic behind that?
Just this morning, my tenant emailed me to extort me for 6 months of rent, so in order to leave early so I can sell the property. Where do I begin? Tenants have all the rights here in Ontario. We're vilified by our government, our media. The landlord-tenant board is completely broken. I have plenty of clients who've been owed a year of rent or more. I've had tenants vandalize my own properties, and the cops would do nothing. And then my own tax dollars paid for the legal aid to defend my tenant against me at the tribunal. I had to pay that tenant $4,000 to leave too after he flooded my basement. So and then real estate, if I think all everyone on this knows, like, real estate investing doesn't make sense unless you can do financing. And then when a friend of mine, he's in Windsor, he was able to, Scott, Austin.
Yeah.
So he's rolled out U.S. mortgages to Canadians. So now that I can get a mortgage in the States for income property, I went down the rabbit hole. And yeah, I've always known the U.S. is better, especially the southern states where it's landlord friendly. So yeah, I just everything makes sense. Well, rights are in our favor. There's no rent control. 30, 60 days to get rid of a bad tenant. The Americans are investing billions and billions of dollars to build manufacturing plants and microchips in electric vehicle manufacturing. So it just makes complete sense. And everything's just way more affordable. I'll be buying houses in the States for under $300,000,
right?
Compared to, I was talking to Cody Ye today, who did a garden suite for $550 Canadian. So yeah, the numbers just make sense. The rights are in my favor. Cash flow is better. Cap rates are you can actually get 5 to 7 caps in the States on a single family home. So yeah,
on single family, which is absolutely nuts. You can't even do that with multifamily properties here in Ontario nowadays.
without a
Yeah,
lot of pain, a lot of pain to do it.
for sure. So it seems like the straw that broke the camel's back, and I guess it is for a lot of people, is it seems like the tenant regulations. There's no control around that, right? So like anything that goes wrong, a lot of that money is really ultimately coming out of your pocket. Is there any reason, just out of curiosity, and again, we'll get to the questions, guys, so make sure to drop them there. But is there any reason why you didn't do like another province in Canada? I know Alberta is a very popular one where it's a little
Hmm.
bit more tenant friendly
Hmm.
versus just again like switching completely over to another country.
The thing about so I'm already capped for mortgages. My last mortgage was a B mortgage with the home trust, so I'm paying through the nose, as you know, a B mortgage. Because even though my wife and I are well off, we have difficulty getting mortgages. Versus in the States, it'll be debt service ratio, commercial style mortgages. So I can have as many mortgages as I want as long as I have down payments, and I can find properties that cash flow that cover the mortgage, taxes, insurance. And because my plan is to build a portfolio of 10 to 20 properties in the States, I need scalable financing, right?
Right.
Right. And anyone who's in Canada that like you're trying to get your fifth or sixth mortgage, it's not easy. Right.
Right.
My wife's an accountant. I have an in-house CFO. So we're lucky to be able to get as much debt as we have, but going forward, it's just not feasible here.
Yeah, so obviously the opportunity for growth is much more significant, even on the residential side of the States. I have a feeling we're going to get a lot of financing questions here. Again, like we're going to also have Scott, for those who don't know. What's Scott's last name again?
Dillingham.
Scott Dillingham from Lens City.
Yes.
He is a mortgage broker who deals with Canadians who are actually buying in the States. So he deals with financing on that end.
Yeah.
So question here that we got from Facebook. Can we leverage in the US easily if we're fully levered in Canada, specifically for multifamily? So I
Yeah.
assume that's sort of what you were mentioning before.
Yeah. I've already talked to Scott about the properties I've looked at. Like, I'm very leveraged here in Canada, but the Americans actually don't even look at our credit. From my understanding, the lenders will only look to see that, make sure I own my own home in Canada, because they don't want to finance residential, as in like people moving to the States. They don't want to finance their principal residence. They want to be making sure you own a home already, and they just want to make sure I pay my taxes. And that's the extent of the credit check on me. And then the rest of the focus will be, appraisal for the rent and the price of the property. To close on a property, I have to have the money in a bank in the States, and it's that easy. It's that easy. Multifamily as well. It's multifamily is generally commercial mortgages, and also in the States, like their lenders are lining up to lend, versus that whole OSFI thing that was just announced this week. Like the national bank regulator is clamping down on even more mortgages. So, our regulator wants our banks to lend less, versus American lenders want more to lend more. So again, path of least resistance. It's really just a simple solution.
Yeah, so why don't you walk me through sort of your journey so far on the financing end, right? Like what was some of the hiccups that you faced? Because I think that's a big fear for a lot of Canadians investing in the States. Is like, okay, we're gonna have to buy cash, right? Which is sometimes it is recommended, but that's not the only solution. So could you walk
Right.
us through your journey about getting into your first rental in the States, or how that would look like for someone like me who has a portfolio in Canada and I want to buy a single family home in the US?
So my own journey is I've sold 3 properties of my own. They close in May. So I'll be writing offers for properties in the States in May.
Mhm.
And for anyone who knows, my wife is an accountant, so I'll take the profits and I'll pay down my principal residence, and then I'll use HELOC to lend to my U.S. entity. So therefore, then the interest on the money I'm lending to my U.S. entity is now interest deductible. Sorry, is deductible against my income. So this is the old-fashioned Smith maneuver. We'll do the same with my whole life as well. The whole infinite banker concept, or be your own banker concept. So we're just using all the best practices on, minimizing our tax liability, right? And so then I'll open up bank accounts in the States wherever my lenders want it, and then I'll be writing offers in the States. And again, like Scott, for example, has like 30 lenders lined up already, ready to lend to Canadians for U.S. income properties. my friends that share the asset manager, they use their tech enabled. So the brokerage is down there. Like you just enter your deal into a broker page, and your deal is shopped to 100 lenders. And again, it's all debt service ratio. This is commercial style mortgages, which any sophisticated real estate investor in Canada, that's what you want. You want commercial style mortgages. So then the focus is on the property rather than ourselves. And I don't have to personally qualify for any of this.
And it's debt service ratio, just to make it clear, for single family homes as well.
I'm personally doing single family. This is how I'm getting started. I don't know if I'll do beyond that. I've been around, for anyone who knows me, I've been a landlord for almost 20 years. My clients and I have made a lot of money in small residential. I have over 45 clients who have achieved millionaire or multimillionaire status as real estate investors. I made a little bit myself, and just keeping it boring and trying to keep this as low risk and passive as possible.
Right. So, but again, you can debt service on single family homes to qualify, is what you were alluding to before, right?
Yeah,
so
these are commercial mortgages. Yeah.
Right. And it's not, I'm not going to say relatively easy, but it's possible to debt service on single family homes. Whereas in Ontario, it's next to impossible. It's not, I don't want to say impossible. If you go far enough, maybe you could find it, but it's extraordinarily tough to do that in Ontario. So
right.
Obviously,
versus I can get like versus I can get like 5 caps in like Dallas or Austin, Texas. I'm gonna keep on picking on Austin, Texas. So I'm gonna keep talking about Austin, just so Austin has to talk about Austin. What a great place it is.
I can hear my name all day, dude. Yeah, we're gonna get into the markets. It seems like someone has a question on it, but before we do that, do you need any specific visas or a permit to buy properties in the U.S. and to get leverage in the States?
No, you just need to create a U.S. entity. So you don't even need a lawyer to do it. This is only a couple $100 transaction to do. This is actually very simple. Keep in mind, the Americans, especially in the landlord-friendly states, they're very much open for business. It is not like Ontario or BC or Quebec at all. So it's actually very easy. Pretty much I don't know anyone who's been denied to create a U.S. entity which will own your U.S. properties.
What's the easiest way to do so? Do you get a lawyer involved, or is it?
I think it's a notary. I believe it's a step down from a lawyer. Whatever that, because I don't believe we have those here in Canada, but it's a step down from a lawyer. So your lawyer in Canada can't help you with this. You generally shouldn't get a lawyer for this in the States, because again, a level down will be able to do it for you for less money than a lawyer.
Gotcha. And once you have that, you're pretty much good to go to start shopping for properties.
Yeah, because you and I, we're not Americans. We're not allowed to own property. But the U.S. entity that we create, it will. You have to have that, because that's what's writing the offer, right? Okay. That's what's going to be your property. Your company is going to own the property that your income property, whatever property that is.
And this process, is it relatively time consuming or pretty straightforward? If someone wanted to get started by, let's say, by the first week of April, is it easy enough to get set up?
Probably pretty. To quote Scott Dillingham, who does this for a living, it's 10 times easier than getting a mortgage in Canada.
Yeah.
10 times easier. Again, lenders are lining up to lend to non-residents, to Canadian investors.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So we're gonna switch the topic into markets now. So what markets are you buying in, or I guess like doing due diligence on, and what type of strategy are you looking for? Long-term BRRRR, small or large multifamilies? You can see the questions down there, right?
Yeah, I can see them.
Perfect. Yeah.
So the first question, what markets are you buying? So so let's take a step back. Like what I'm looking, the way I invest is I look to see who has a future. I'm very greedy and I love to make money. The more money, the better. So if I'm going to make an investment, I want to make maximum money with as little risk as possible. So for example, what is the big story out of the States? The Americans are trying to reshore manufacturing. They're basically trying to double their manufacturing in the next 5 years, which was a big lesson coming out of COVID, was they realized too much of mission critical things were being made in China. Like for example, like 90% of our generic drugs were made in China. So during COVID, we lost access to a lot of that. Anyways, so back to the manufacturing story in the States. 2 of the big manufacturing investments that are going on in the States is microchip manufacturing and car manufacturing, specifically electric vehicle and batteries related. So if you just do a simple Google, I actually have a spreadsheet on all this, but I don't think I don't think you'd be able to see it here. But like for example, I'm going to Savannah, Georgia. Why Savannah, Georgia? Because Hyundai, the world's third largest auto manufacturing company, is building an electric vehicle plant just outside Savannah, Georgia. It is a $7.6 billion project, the largest project in the state of Georgia's history. It will create 8,500 jobs, plus another 6,000 jobs among their suppliers. So like I mentioned, I like to make maximum money for as little risk as possible. So I will likely be buying a house between Hyundai and Savannah, Georgia. Right? I'm looking to buy something under 300,000, and I'll rent it out long term. Right? I'm choosing to rent things long term because it's easiest to find property management for the most boring investments.
Right.
I may BRRRR as well if there's an opportunity to BRRRR. I'll come with cash and HELOC, and I'll buy the property, do the renovation, and then go get my commercial mortgage. Because I want to borrow US dollars. I want US dollars to be created out of thin air, and I want them to be mine.
Yeah, so it seems like you're taking obviously a fundamentals approach. So some people who invest in the States, like everyone has a different strategy. Some people do Section 8, which is very, very active. Some people...
I wanted to.
Sorry?
I wanted to. Oh, I have contacts to do it for me. Yeah.
Why don't you share a little bit about Section 8, what it is, and why you were looking into it?
So Section 8 is a government subsidy program for tenants who qualify, who are in the program. The government will basically pay the tenant or pay the landlord about 75% on average, over 70% of the rent to the landlord. So just think of that as a landlord. Your rent is heavily subsidized by the government. I know people don't always trust the government, but it's not that bad a customer to have. The nice things about it as well is that someone from the government who works in the Section 8 program will inspect the property at least once a year to make sure that the tenant's a good tenant and the property and the property's maintained properly, right? So I have someone to inspect my property for me, both the property and to check on my tenant, make sure they're well behaved. Because if the tenant is not well behaved and does not take care of the property, they will be ejected from the program and lose that subsidy of 70, 75, 80% of their rent, right? So the tenants are being held accountable. Now, appreciate though that these properties are typically not in the nicest areas, so these are cash flow plays. So I'm down for that. But the joke kind of is you have to be a little bit okay with being in a not such a nice neighborhood. And also you have to come with cash. Typically these properties are well under $100,000. Like for example, properties for like $50,000, $60,000 will rent for, like $700-800 a month.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, again, like there's different strategies. So it seems like, I mean, that would be a mix of, I guess, like cash flow. I know people who invest in like Buffalo, where you're probably not going to see much appreciation there versus like some of the markets that you're looking at. So it seems like the approach that you're taking is find a booming industry, find where there's going to be potential job growth and jobs created of that booming industry, and get in early on the appreciation curve. Right. And then get that passive appreciation, which is sort of a similar play to what you did in your investment portfolio in Ontario, just replicating it in the US while it's still cash flow positive in the short and long term as well.
Yes, I'd say that because most of my portfolio is in Hamilton. We never really got like any sort of major 1,000+ job story from an individual company. Right. But, everything was driven largely by, you could argue reckless immigration policy and reckless monetary policy. But the Americans have plenty of reckless monetary policy themselves. So I will definitely benefit from inflation.
Quick question on that end. Like when you're trying to get in early on the appreciation curve, it could take 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years to
not necessarily. Because I appreciate that many of these plants have already started being built.
So that's what I was going to get into. Like, what is it? Like, are you just looking at like a plan, or are you looking at like so what is it that makes you decide like this is going to appreciate in the near or middle term?
So for example, the plants that I'm looking at buying near, and there's lots of them in the States, like there's TSMC north of Phoenix, there's Texas Instruments just north of Dallas, Texas. There's Samsung being built just east of Austin, our favorite place in the world, Austin.
Yeah.
Toyota is opening up a plant near Greensboro, North Carolina. So all of these have broken ground, right? You can actually go on many of these projects. You can just go on Google Maps and people have posted pictures of them. So a lot of these places are being planned to open within a year or 18 months, right? So the appreciation curve has already started, right? People started speculating as soon as announcements were made. Like Columbus, Ohio is getting both an Intel plant east of it and a Hyundai LG plant. I think it's LG or LSK. Anyways, Hyundai is gonna build electric batteries for electric vehicles just southwest of Columbus, Ohio. So double whammy, right? So I want a house in Columbus, Ohio as well. It's really just Cherry's trying to put the reins on me to not spend all of our money on houses.
Fair enough. But okay, so it seems like shovels on the ground. You want to see that progress has been made, and then you
yes, because projects get canceled. For example, the Rivian project outside of Atlanta got canceled. Right, Rivian, the Amazon-backed electric vehicle, they were supposed to manufacture trucks east of Atlanta, but that project got canceled. So that's why it's important to, I'm okay to be later on the appreciation curve, knowing that it's much more assured that that plant's going to be built and those thousands and thousands of jobs are coming, and I'm going to rent to those people.
Yeah, minimizing the risk of course.
Minimizing the risk, and keep in mind these people make like, for example, the Hyundai plant in Savannah, Georgia. The average income is supposed to be 58,000 American plus benefits. So that's almost double the average income for someone in Georgia, right? So I'm renting to an above average income tenant, and I am very happy with that.
Right. And if they choose to buy, then that's going to push prices up around
here.
Yep. It works out, right?
Yeah. My plan is to hold forever, though, because these are things I want to probably pass on to my kids.
Mm-hmm. So there's a question here. If this is a question better suited for Scott, then obviously, sir, you guys can reach out to him. But is it possible to invest in the U.S. if you're not a homeowner?
I'm sure it is. There's hundreds of lenders in the States. There's going to be someone that wants you. Right, and because the States is just so different that they're 10 times the size of us. Actually, here's an interesting stat. Texas, I'm going to buy a property in. Texas GDP, the economy of GDP is 2 trillion, right? With a population of 30 million. When Canada hit 2 trillion, the population was 39 million, right? So Canada is a third bigger for the same size of economy. Right. Yeah. So for anyone who follows the news and follows economics in Canada, we are lagging behind. We're about to fall behind. We're going to be able to fall behind Italy to be last in GDP per capita among the G7.
It was funny because it was moving lockstep with the US a decade earlier, and then suddenly after that, obviously, real estate's not a productive asset, and a lot of our money is going into unproductive assets.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay,
and they're expensive. They're expensive as heck.
Yeah. So there was a funny thing. We're getting a little bit off topic, but there was a funny thing on a podcast I was listening to. Like, it was an economics podcast in the States. A lot of people invest in like the S&P 500 as a passive means for income. In Canada, everyone wants to buy real estate. And S&P, you're investing into businesses. They're productive. When you're investing into real estate, it's not necessarily net productive to an economy, right? Like you're not pushing innovation or anything like that. So it's just a difference in mindset.
Yeah, I'm not that smart. I'll be the landlord to the guy who works in AI making microchips. Right. I'm smart enough to put my house in the way of that guy.
So we'll shoot on to the Instagram questions here. Is the U.S. entity gets capital gain tax? Okay. Do you get tax capital gains when you sell a property with the U.S. entity?
So I'm going to answer that question with a question. It depends on if you're American or Canadian, how this is handled. Because if you're American, you can do the whole Section 1031 exchange. Right? Versus if you're straight up Canadian like I am, then Canada does not accept that any sort of deferment of capital gains. So if I'm Canadian, my tax bill would be the same as it is if it was a Canadian property. It's just who I pay that tax to. Right?
Right.
The U.S. you have to pay tax to the federal government in the states, and the state. Usually, it's a very small amount for the state, and then the remainder you have to pay in Canada.
Understood. Perfect. Oh, we already asked.
But yeah, I'm not an accountant though. If anyone didn't realize, I'm not an accountant. So
Yeah,
and I
we should
remember
mention this is not professional advice. If you're looking for professional advice for financing or accounting, to obviously consult an expert. But who was from Windsor and Financing? Would you mind sharing again the information of the lender that you're talking about?
his name's Scott Dillingham. Austin would, I'm sure, would be happy to make the introduction for you.
Right.
Austin does do mortgages too, so
Not U.S. mortgages though.
I'm sure you can work out something with Scott. Scott is helping so many other people as well in the mortgage industry. He'll announce that soon. I'm sure he'll be happy to help you out.
We chatted. So if you guys listen to the pod or anything like that, or follow me, just keep on following for some big news about U.S. investing soon.
Because it's the future. It is the future. Why would anyone else buy anything else here?
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing a lot of the bigger investors sort of shift their portfolio down there. Andrew Hines, Matt Pichet, Sean Allen bought a couple of things in Florida. Mike Rosehart has bought, I think, like a couple of motels in Florida as well. So a lot more people are shifting their capital towards there. How do you structure?
Even everyday investors too. Like I had 3 of my own listings listed. Almost no investor interest. Right? People are spooked. Like Austin, you probably had these same conversations. You talk to someone who's well off, they do not want to be a landlord because they're all scared of tenants. And more so than ever should people be scared of tenants in Ontario and BC.
Yeah, and it seems like the situation's like, not to get off track, but obviously it's getting a little bit worse, a lot worse. There seems to be more backlogs, right? Things aren't necessarily getting better. If anything, the rules are getting a little bit more strict. We had a paralegal on our last month's Ask Me Anything, and they said that there's a legitimate N13, so like, rent eviction, because someone wanted to redevelop into a large apartment building, and it was legitimate. All the permits drawn, everything, and went to the LTB, and the LTB said no, even though everything was on side. The LTB decided against it because it was going to be too much displacement. Because it was still a decent amount of tenants that lived in that building, but they're going to like triple it, and they had all the architect drawings, but. I mean,
yeah, and this is consistent among many people's experience. The LTB will side with the tenant.
Right. Okay, so back on topic here. How do you structure your U.S. investment for tax purposes as a Canadian? I'm not sure if you feel comfortable answering this or not.
For myself, we'll be likely doing a limited partnership. Right. Again, it's a good idea to speak to an accountant. So just as a word of caution, U.S. investing is not that common out there. No one's really at no time before were people doing it on scale until starting now. Mark this episode with Austin. You're going to be seeing this more and more and more. More people are going to the States. So again, it's hard to find accounting advice on this because not many investors are doing this. So there's not that much demand on accountants to know this stuff. So anyways, my wife is an absolute geek, so I love her for this. So we will be likely doing limited partnership, unlikely an LLC, but if that'd be something else that we may consider, but unlikely. So yeah, LP will likely be appropriate for probably 80% of investors. Again, it really depends on your goals. If you're planning on buying one, your goal is very different than someone who's planning on buying 30, let alone someone who's going to go down there and do flips. Right. If it was Austin, he'd probably go down there and flips. He'd probably go straight to Austin and start doing flips. So his legal structure would be completely different than mine. Right.
So would you walk us through the thought process for your legal structure, if you don't mind sharing? Like, what was it that made you decide?
It's largely around where you're going to keep the money. Right. And also there's costs involved. Like, for example, if you're only going to buy one, you may not want to do anything, right? Why would you create an entity? Why would you have an annual accounting fee? An annual corporate filing tax, right? So it's really, we're choosing the middle of the road option. Versus LLC is much more common among the much more advanced in high net worth folks.
Right. Okay. Perfect. And again, to your point, for your specific situation,
Rosie.
yeah, that's Rosehart. Don't do it. He doesn't want competition down there.
I'm not going to Florida. I'm a passive investor, so like I could never. I already have enough stress in my life, so the idea of having my hundreds of thousands of dollars in the way of a hurricane does not do it for me.
Question here is a lot of tax questions actually. How is rental income taxed if you are Canadian with a US property?
Again, almost everything that you would do accounting wise in the States, you do here in Canada as well. So like Austin's, I'm sure, is well versed on all the different ways that you would have deductions against your income here. Like depreciation deducted against your income. My favorite is like, I need a shop vac to be a landlord, but I keep it in my garage, right? But yeah, it's really no different again. And also income, like for example, a lot of investors will be lending their money, Canadian money, to their US entities as well. So when I bring some of that money back, it'll be repayment of shareholder loan rather than income necessarily. But again, go talk to your accountant. My wife's been doing webinars on this subject as well. Austin, you might want to have her on.
Yeah,
especially when I get this many tax questions.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of financing and tax questions, which obviously we would have anticipated. So, yeah, I mean, maybe if you guys are interested, I guess.
Yeah, folks should be asking about the investment, right? Ask me about the investment, but the accounting. To me, the accounting and financing and like that's and the legal entity and ownership stuff. That's the easy stuff.
What's the due diligence done on opening a U.S. entity?
Almost none.
That's simple.
Just again, folks, like understand there's lots of people who are investing already. Again, people have been doing it quietly. I'm the one, that's going to be shouting about this on the megaphone because I jokingly say to my friends, like I jokingly say to Scott, every time we save a landlord from an Ontario tenant, we've done our job, right? So right. Yeah, and like again, I've been a landlord for almost 20 years. I feel like I've been kicked and abused. Like the mayor of Hamilton is Andrea Horwath, the former leader of the NDP party. She is so anti-business, so anti-landlord. Doug Ford is, I don't mean to be political, but the Conservative Party operates more like the Liberal Party these days. Like they have not been a friend of the landlord at all. So I'm done. And I'm telling everyone what I'm doing. And literally, I have friends who are forwarding my content to politicians in Ottawa. Look at what you're doing to landlords. Erwin's bringing his whole community to the States, and that will be an exodus of small landlords. So who's going to be the landlord now in Ontario? Right? Who's going to provide rental housing?
Definitely. Yeah. Pushing out, especially the mom and pop landlords, right?
Like maybe
not as much the institutions, but a lot of the mom and pop landlords, it's just the risk. And we kept on mentioning this at the beginning, but the risk doesn't really make sense, right? I mean, and values have already appreciated quite aggressively. So to rely on a more aggressive appreciation in the future is not necessarily prudence as well.
Yeah, like even the institutions, I don't really understand the business case for being here, right? Like CME, like my friends who have REITs, like CMHC is giving them a hard time on their refinances, right? And they keep adding more rules and more hoops for them to jump through, right? And who wants to build a business around the government being your strategic partner?
Fair enough. That's a very fair point.
Right?
So you were asking about more U.S. investing questions. Have one here. How do you manage and oversee U.S. investments from Canada?
So I'm going through an asset manager for all my properties. Their job is to source me my properties, to manage the property manager. And the asset manager that I'm using is called Share. They're from the REIT world. So for example, the chief investment officer, Dimitri, is ex-Starlight Investments. Starlight Investments is the largest apartment building owner in Canada, but Dimitri worked on the US portfolio. He was on the team that grew that portfolio from 800 units to 20,000 units, $7 billion. So my friend Dimitri, who is chief investment officer of Share, the asset manager, who's going to manage all my properties for me, he knows more about real estate investing in the States than anyone I know personally. So for example, he was managing a 20,000 unit portfolio. That is twice the size of Grant Cardone's 10,000 unit portfolio. So he has experience with 2x of Mr. 10x. So yeah, I basically have a joint venture partner who is incredibly qualified, and I only have to pay them fees, acquisition fee and asset management fees, but I keep all the equity and control to myself. So this is the best investment arrangement I've ever seen in my career.
Right. So what is the breakdown actually in fees and all of that? And can anyone get involved with it, or how does
anyone can get involved? I've got a ton of clients. I've only started this in the fall. I already have 4 clients buy properties, and I have a dozen more creating US entities and writing offers. Right? And we're going to make a lot of noise because we're getting a ton of momentum. My calendar is stuffed with people who want to exit Canada, especially people in BC and Ontario, and want to go where they're welcome, where their capital is welcome. But yeah, so to get back to the question. So again, like Share, Dimitri, the CIO, they're from the institutional world. So they already have all the property management contacts that institutions use. So that is what I want for my investment business. I want the biggest of the biggest property managers. So for example, like the Atlanta property manager I met with, they have 3,000 houses under management in Atlanta, right? So when you're that big, they have a staff of like 100. So they have people on staff, lawyers, accountants, whatever, fence people, plumbers, handy people, cement person, right? So then I actually save on repairs and maintenance and filling fees because I'm with these enormous property managers. And also Share being an institutional investor themselves, they're able to negotiate better contracts. For example, with property management, there's no property management fees if there's no rent coming in.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, you benefit from the economies of scale. So what's going to cost you in the management fees, or like the asset management fees, is you're going to make up for it on the savings of repairs, on the savings of property management, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to be saving more on those ends than maybe the cost of what you're going to be paying out of pocket, and it's going to be more passive ultimately. But that being said, like if you wanted to implement, let's say that someone wants to do something on their own and sort of figure it out from there, what would be sort of your steps if you wanted to do this solo and like kind of build your own power team? How would you do so in a country that, I mean, you're not in? Would you recommend someone actually go down and network?
Oh, absolutely. If you're young like Austin, like Austin's investment strategy currently is very different from my own. Like I'm much more passive, lazy, boring, let the market take care of me. Austin, I know you like to get more involved. So there's nothing wrong with that. If you're young and you have time, like go for it. The challenge is a bit of geography. Like for example, if someone's coming, if I'm guessing most folks here are from Ontario or Canada. So like again, I mentioned Columbus, Ohio. Columbus is a state capital. They're getting the Intel plant in the Honda plant. They're getting Honda, and Honda's partnering with LG, right? Honda, LG, like these are all global Fortune 500 companies. Intel, right? I think that'd be a wonderful place for anyone to start their research. And if they're going on their own, just go on Bigger Pockets, go on their forum, go find out who the managers are. Go there, go do the meetups, right? Like Austin, you shared on my podcast. This was your journey. Like go there regularly, make friends with everyone, join the Facebook group, but you need FaceTime. Like go to the meetings, get to know people, and then get going.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I mean, obviously it's possible to do it from your laptop on your phone, but the results may not be the same versus if
Yeah.
someone knows you and sees you face to face and has an actual relationship with you. I've
Yes.
tried doing things over the phone with particular city I was investing in, and it's much harder to manage. People feel like they can get away with more things, right? Versus even if they meet you once or twice, it really changes things. They meet you, they get to speak with you, they see you face to face, they see your character, and
Mhm.
they know that if anything happens, you might be willing to go back again to have a chat with them if need be.
Yeah, I want none of that. I want to be lazy. My kids are young and I'm really enjoying them. So like, yeah, I'm having way too much fun talking to local investors about US investing. Much rather have those conversations than talking to property managers, wholesalers, realtors, tenants.
That's a necessary evil in Ontario to speak with your tenants. Okay, so question here: how should you be? This is blocking your face, but how should you be underwriting deals in the States? The same as Canada. What are you building into your pro forma for expenses? How do you know these expenses are accurate? And how about rent? Where are you getting the rent estimates from?
All excellent questions. So again, I'm leaning on Dimitri, the Chief Investment Officer of Share, because again, he's ex-REIT, right? He has access to live data from all the resources that are out there, and he still has friends in the REIT world, right? So he has access to better data than all of us combined, probably, unless any of you guys work at a REIT, right? Again, like he worked at Starlight for almost 7 years or 8 years. Right? They have 20,000 units. They have data. They have all the data, right? They have live internal data, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, for example, that's what made my business successful in Hamilton. The client asked me, "Well, what's the rent for this property?" I go, "Oh, it'll be 2,200 for this unit and for this, and 1,700 for the basement." Like, how do you know? Well, my client owns that house just over there, and like I own the house just 2 streets over,
Right.
right? I have live data, right? For context of Hamilton, right? Share has all this information. Now, if someone wants to go do this on their own, like Zillow has a rental management website, so that's a great resource. Again, though, keep in mind that those are averages, so you
Right.
do have to adjust for the condition of your property. So that's a great place. Zillow also has like the rent price estimates as well. The American tools are just so much better in general.
Mm-hmm.
Someone asked for projected. Again, I'm working with folks from the institutional world, so they are much more detailed. Sorry, let me take a step back. I'm working with folks from the institutional world who are promoting themselves to institutional investors.
Right.
So they are the most detail oriented investors because you have to be highly accurate and defensible in order to do business,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, the projections I look at, they are the most detailed I've ever seen in my career.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It's nothing like we ever did for our clients.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I went to business school, so I'm perfectly comfortable doing accounting stuff. It's not the easiest for regular everyday people to understand these reports, which is why with my clients we generally focused on cash flow.
Right. Is there anything? So you mentioned that it's obviously much more detailed. Is there anything that stands out when you look at the reports? Like, wow, I should include that in my pro forma for my clients in Ontario, for example. Like, is there anything where it's like, oh, this is no?
Not really. I think here's the tough one for an Ontario investor or BC investor or Quebec investor. Like, what is your bad? How much do you forecast for bad debt?
Right. And
Right?
explain bad debt for those who don't know what it is, because most people, including myself, to be quite frank, I'm ashamed to say, don't underwrite for bad debt. So
Right.
why don't you explain that?
So, we like for single family homes, we always factored between 4 and 8% for vacancy law for vacancy. Like you expect to be vacant 1 month a year. That's how we do in our pro formas, for example. We expect to be vacant 1 month of the year, just in between tenants, right? But then there's bad debt, as in the tenant doesn't pay you, or I don't even know. Like I'm doing some cash for keys. I'm not even sure what I'm filing that under for expenses. So cash for keys, bad debt, all those sorts of things, as in the tenant's not paying you, right? As in non-payment of rent, right?
Right.
how much do you factor in? So I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah. And whatever you factor in, it's never going to be accurate, right? If you have
No,
one
it's
bad
not.
tenant, realistically speaking, that could be an entire year of rental income
It
gone
could
to,
be. And for
yes,
many people, that's devastating.
exactly. Yeah. No, that's a very fair point there. Um, so question here, what are the key risks in investing in the US market from a Canadian perspective? And how do you potentially mitigate these risks? So obviously we know that Ontario has a lot of risks around the tenant side. Um, does the US have any sort of like, I guess, do they have any unique risks that are not, that you don't typically see in Canadian real estate, or is it pretty much all the same?
Uh, the Americans, in my observation, the markets I look at, their vacancy rates are higher.
Okay.
So like true vacancy in like any market that myself or Austin looks at in Ontario is typically around 1% or under, right? For underwriting in the States, even though we're looking at like top tier cities like Dallas or Atlanta or Austin, yeah, like I keep throwing in Austin, or Columbus, it's more like 5%, and also they're way more seasonal. In my experience, especially in like Hamilton, for example, rentals are not that seasonal. That we have pretty steady demand throughout the year. Versus I find we're finding right now, at least in the States, like winter is quite slow right now for rental,
Mhm.
and so then it's just you just like I've been around for many markets, so I'm used to it. If it's a slow market, you need to get ahead of it. You need to adjust your rent quickly,
Right.
right? Like I'm cheap. And Canadians are generally known as being thrifty. I'm Chinese too, so I'm extra. Is if you want to sell, you have to be the best deal. So when you're doing your underwriting, when you're like, for example, now if I'm underwriting my rent, I look at my comparables, and I need to be the lowest to make sure that I rent first.
Right.
Right. And that's the nice thing about the States, because I know people here, they're all concerned about, I don't want to rent for low because I'm locked in because of rent control. Well, not the same in the States. There's no rent control. I can raise my rents later as the market improves. Right. And if I bought
That's a very
smart, the market will improve.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I guess here in Ontario, like I just have a couple of vacancies myself. The struggle that I sort of go through is figuring out, I mean, one, you don't want to rent it too low because to your point, there's only so much you can
You're
increase it
locked
every
in.
year.
Yeah.
But also, two, is if I keep my rent at market rent and I'm getting a lot of applications that are subpar,
Mm-hmm.
how much am I willing to spend in vacancy costs before I'm like, let me just take something
Right.
50, 60, 70,
Right.
$100 cheaper, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's that constant battle. But again, in the States, it doesn't seem as much of an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could take a little bit of a haircut and it might cost you for 1 year or whatever
Mm-hmm.
that duration is, but you
Mm-hmm.
know how much it's going to cost you. In Ontario, there's so much uncertainty. If I leave my price at this, it could be 5 months of vacancy, 4 months of vacancy. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's no guarantee with anything
Mm-hmm.
there.
Oh, I'd actually like to talk more to that last question. There's some
Right.
hidden risks that we're not even familiar with until you actually do some diligence. Like I didn't even know this. Like for anyone who's done a home inspection, for example, or done a roof before, your roof shingles are rated for 30 years. But you look at your home inspection, and it'll always say like expect 15 or 25% less than 30 years. The same is not true in the sunny Sunbelt states of the U.S. Roofs the shingles are rated for 30 years and expected to last for 30 years.
Mhm.
The cold is actually really bad for your house. It's bad for your roof, your brick, your siding, your doors, your windows. So, and then add on to that, because we are cold weather climate, we all have basements,
Yeah.
right? And basements will all eventually fail, right? Versus in the States where I'm investing, there's no basement. There's no basement to finish. There's no basement to flood. There's less risk in terms of building construction.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
also,
I think
I'm buying less old because I don't need
uh-huh.
to buy a 1950s duplex anymore, right? I can buy a lot newer property because I don't need a basement to suite in order to make the numbers work.
That makes a lot of sense. So I mean, like when you're underwriting, your maintenance and repairs are gonna, and your capex is gonna be a lot less than it
A
would be
lot
in
less,
Canada. A lot less.
right?
But you can underwrite the same. Like in Canada, most people do 4 to 5% on capex and like 3 to 5% on repairs. You can underwrite the same in the US, be cash flow positive, and be a little bit more certain that those numbers are actually going to be realistic. Versus again in Canada, the life expectancy of these things, as you mentioned, could be 20-25% less.
Yeah.
Very
And then
good
some of these properties in the southern states don't even have furnaces. So
right.
you have one less appliance to pay for.
Yeah. So question here, what is foreign exchange risk and how does it impact cross-country investing?
Excellent question. I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't tell you where the dollar is going or where anything is going. I'm just making educated bets. I personally like to gamble. So again, I like to do things only if it's all in my favor. So for example, if you're worried about a foreign exchange, then you don't have to do all your investing at once. The old adage, dollar cost averaging, right? Like even Warren Buffett talks about like, don't time the S&P, just buy some every set interval, every month, every 2 weeks, whatever your set interval is, right? I will say though, is just look at our economy. If you were betting on the US economy, if you wanted to bet on Canada's economy over the US, I'd love to have a debate with you. We were just talking earlier how Canada is about to fall behind Italy in terms of GDP per capita, right? There's actually a term for the least productive countries in Europe, and we are falling behind one of them, right? We should actually even fall out of the G7, right? We are not productive. Other than Spotify, what was the last Fortune 500 company to come out of Canada, right? Versus, how many household names can you all name?
Right?
Yeah, after Shopify, what other Fortune 500 companies come out of Canada?
Yeah.
Right. If anyone has an answer to that, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
Research in motion, right? Versus the Americans are pumping them out. And just look who's getting all the investment. Like, just look who's getting all the investment.
Right.
Who's got major job announcements in Canada? Right. We have two. We have Stellantis and the Volkswagen battery.
Yeah.
Right. Everything else is going to the States or Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Everyone on this call, you're likely all talented people. I bet you any money you're all thinking about moving to the States.
Right.
And how are not all talented people in Canada thinking the same thing? Right?
Yeah, no, and so just anecdotal, a little bit off topic on real estate. One of my buddies, he recently got a job in the US for Facebook, right? He's switching over from, and I think he was probably getting paid maybe low six figures here in Canada in Canadian dollars. Immediately goes over there, it's probably more than 2x, and it's in USD.
Yeah.
And there's just like anecdotally, you hear a lot of the good nurses and doctors will just sort of move over to the States where they get paid much more than they will here, and they get worked much harder here as well.
Oh yes, way harder here because it's public health care. You have to see every patient. Versus in private, you have way less people, and generally they'll be well off, right? And then also, like you're an engineer, I'm sure you have lots of friends who go into the States because you're in a high demand industry. You're getting recruited to go to the States. So sadly, we are losing our most talented people,
including our talented investors like yourself.
My capital is going to the States, and so when I sell my properties, I bet you any money it's going to be a homeowner who's going to live in it, right? And so that rental supply will disappear.
Yeah, and that may not necessarily mean that prices will come down if there's obviously demand to sort of pick that up. So you're stuck in a rock and a hard place. If it's still unaffordable and there's less rental market, it just leaves Canadians in a bad place.
Oh, it's so bad. But I'm not welcome here. So why should I subsidize all my tenants' housing inflation?
So 2 questions here, and then we'll wrap things up. I think we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but the single family house investing work in the US, and how does that compare to multifamily investing in the States?
Excellent question. So there's the earlier question about risk. So to me, from my research, your greatest risk is your property management.
Right.
Because appreciate, Austin, and you've shared some property management adventures. I've been through 6 property managers in just Hamilton alone in my 20-year career. So that's about 3 property managers. Like every 3 years, you have to turn it over, right? So wherever you invest, whatever you invest in, expect to turn over your property manager every 3 years at least. So you better have lots of access to property managers, good quality property managers, whatever you choose to invest in. Now, I want to be lazy. And I want the biggest institutional property managers working on my property. I can only get that in the single family category when I'm investing through Share, the asset manager, because I'm a client of Share, and the institution, and then the property managers will work with Share. I get the benefit from their economies of scale, much like I'm just like me being a Costco member. I get pretty good deals because I get the benefit from the buying power of Costco, right? Multifamily is wonderful. I know lots of people have made lots of money on multifamily. The challenge here is that I'm not that deep pocketed of an investor. I don't take on partners for investments. My wife and I can only afford single family homes. Mm-hmm. So multifamily is wonderful, but again, you're not going to get an institutional grade multifamily property manager unless you're enormous. Right. And I'm not enormous.
And also, I guess to your point, you're getting institutional, you're getting the backing, not backing, sorry, you're investing with an institutional sort of investor company while retaining all of the equity, right? So
all the equity, all the control.
Yeah,
because anytime I can fire them and sell the house.
Yeah, exactly. And when you go into multi, that's not the case, right? You give up equity in that situation. You don't retain all of the equity that you put in the money in, right? There's the operators that get some equity as well.
That's typically the case, and because that's where the REITs operate, right? REITs typically take a percentage of your property, they take a percentage of your equity. I'm sure you've talked about joint ventures on this show many times, right? Mm-hmm. Joint venture partners take equity, and many REITs, they take a performance fee as well. For example, Tricon, the company out of Toronto that owns 38,000 houses in the States, I was looking at their annual statement in 2022. Their performance fee was 10 times their asset management fee.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. So I'm cheap. I want to keep all those profits to myself.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense. Last question here before we wrap up. It's a fitting question too. Do you still hold homes or investments in Ontario for long-term buy and holds? And do you recommend investors to continue to hold properties in Ontario, assuming you already have an existing portfolio?
So my thing is always, you don't sell unless you have a better opportunity.
Right.
I found a better opportunity, so I've sold off some of my portfolio. Mm-hmm. I'll likely sell off the rest of it next year and the year after. I have a pile of taxes to pay this year. So I'm not so motivated, and the market isn't that good. We'll see how the market goes the second half of the year after we have some rate cuts.
Right.
But again, I already have a pile of tax to pay. So yeah. And again, I'm just trying to remove headaches from my life. And yeah, I don't know any Ontario landlord who doesn't think their properties are headaches. So yeah, I'm taking profits. There's never, no one ever goes bankrupt taking profits.
Right.
I tell my clients, go ahead and hold. If you do buy anything else, I think everyone's baseline property, you need to look at the states, mm-hmm. and then compare everything else against that. And like I said, I cannot wait to disrupt this market. I cannot see why anyone else will ever buy a pre-construction condo as an investment ever again when they look at these deals that I'm doing in the States.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, wise words. No one ever loses money by taking profits, except if that is in the form of a refinance. Then that's a little bit different.
Yes, but no one is giving me refinances.
Yeah, fair enough.
Right? People know, I've been at this for a long time. I have significant net worth, but yeah, it ain't easy to scale a portfolio financing wise here.
Mm-hmm. So really appreciate you jumping on, Erwin, for today's Ask Me Anything session. I got a lot of value from it. I'm sure the audience got a lot of value from it as well. There's going to be a replay. So for those who had to jump off, you can catch the replay as well. For people who want to connect with you, follow you, how could they best do so? And if they want to get involved in investing in the States, is there any resources that you would point them towards?
So I think a great place to start is my website that I've partnered with Share, the asset manager. So it's iwin.sharesfr.com. And my name is extremely unique. If you're watching this on Instagram or Facebook, just DM me if you don't know where to find it. But Share SFR, the middle dot, that one needs to be taken out.
Let me do that again. iwin.sharesfr.com.
Yeah, so anyone for free can create a user profile, and then you can look at previous and past deals, and you can look at pro formas as well, and then you'll start getting sample deals sent into your inbox. Right? I literally had a client buy a property off an email. A gentleman out of Quebec, he bought a house in Memphis, 1,100 square foot, $95,000.
That's unreal.
And it's not like out in the middle of nowhere. It's about 30 minutes north of downtown. $25,000 renovation, and it rents for $1,100. Right? So we're into the 1% rule. Right? And this will cash flow less than 30% down, even at historically high interest rates with no credit. Right? And then people can play around with the down payment, and they play with the interest rate. So I would suggest to people to set the interest rate to 4%, because that's what my plan is to do when I refi in 2-3 years from now, when interest rates bottom, refi at 4%, lock in for 30 years.
Yeah.
Right. And then see what happens to your cash flow.
Exactly.
Right.
You remove the rate risk at that point.
Oh yeah, for 30 years.
Yeah.
Right. And then just watch your cash flow grow.
And for those who want to learn more about the topic, you speak a lot about it in your podcast. So make sure to also check out Erwin's podcast if you haven't already. I believe you also had Scott on one of your episodes. So
yeah, Scott on recently.
Questions, check that out. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So just reach out if anyone wants to be pointed towards any good resources. You know, we're providing a ton of free resources everywhere that we are. Because again, I feel like we're doing a public service.
I mean, you convinced me. I've been looking a lot harder in the States after our conversation that we had about a week ago. So I'll make sure.
Yeah, you saw my spreadsheet.
What was that?
You saw my spreadsheet with all the billion-dollar projects.
Your weapon, all your due diligence there. So I'm just going to leverage off of that. But appreciate you jumping on, Erwin. And again, guys, the replay will be available. I know you have another event to attend to. You're a busy man, but thank you for your time.
Yeah, here. I'm at the wine place in Toronto. I'm like my friends are outside eating dinner and drinking fancy wine. But you know, I think anyone can tell I can't stop talking about this, because again, this is a major passion project for me. Making money and helping people. Again, saving people from the Ontario tenant.
The superhero we didn't know that we needed. Awesome. So I'll let you go. I'll let you enjoy the rest of the night. Have fun. And until next time, everyone, invest smarter, live better. Take care, all.